family housing, apartment complexes, university, Illinois Wesleyan, the amount of businesses downtown that had sewer backups. It was a flux of, typically when we have a storm impact like this with 300, 400, 500, 600 calls, about 95% would be residential homes, and I'm going to say about 80% are residential homes. So it was a completely different dynamic, this storm. I mean, I've been doing this over 3 decades, so I've seen a lot of these, what we call catastrophe events. And this one was really different. There was a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges we had in this one is the initial 24 hours where we went out and stabilized 30, 40 properties. A majority of those reflooded over, and some of them reflooded again.
Why do you think it's different, the preponderance of commercial this time around?
I wish I had an absolute answer for you. We've had storms where we've had 10 inches of rain. We'd get that. I think a lot of it in the commercial world, that I understand, I own commercial property, but when you start taking up green space and paving it with a parking lot or putting a building over it, you're taking up square footage or acreage that can only shed water. Well, all it takes, for example, we have a government building on the southeast side of town that they had just mulched all of their beds. And it's a beautiful parking lot. Sewer drains are correctly installed in the parking lot, except all the rain pulled the mulch directly off the beds and plugged up the drains and therefore flooded the building.
So are you seeing, as global climate change folks are saying, an increasing frequency of high-volume rain events?
I'm licensed to teach continuing education classes in the state of Illinois, and I teach, one of the classes I do teach is on advanced water damage. And the question comes up all the time, and I can tell you professionally in the last 15 years that I have professionally seen more weather events than ever, and I can statistically put it on a map of the events that are happening. In our world, when we talk about property damage claims, for a period of about 35 or 40 years, hail damage was the number one reported residential insurance claim. And 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, residential water damage claims have been number one, surpassing hail for almost 5 years. So something is changing.
You mentioned a number of sewer backups. Is that because older sections of town have combined storm and sanitary sewers and newer sections don't? Or what's going on there?
That is part of it. I believe older sections, same thing we run into Peoria and Champaign. You've got this combined sewer system, which is fine. I believe for a period of time there was a tremendous amount of people, because it was not against code. They drained their sump pumps into the sanitary sewer system, which overloaded it. That is now illegal. People were supposed to have those disconnected and drained to the outside. But I think when you have that amount of water in a system that was never designed to hold that amount of water one time, I mean, you can say this is a once in 100-year event, or once, whatever the time frame you want to call it. The fact is that our infrastructure was never designed to withstand 10 inches of rain over an 8-hour period, 10-hour period, whatever it is. And I do believe that there's a lot of people that have sump pumps that are draining into the sanitary sewer system.
How can cities get a handle on that? I mean, it's hard to go into every single house and say, aha, you have a sump and it's going the wrong place.
Well, one of the things, for example, our main office is in Morton, Illinois, and about 12 years ago they banned dumping them into the sewer system. And what they did was they just walked the exterior of the property. We can assume probably 85 or 90% of all newer residential construction on the southeast or west side of Bloomington, new meaning in the past 20 years, has some form of a sump system, whether it's on the interior or exterior. So what they did was they walked the exterior and they looked for the discharge line, even if it was underground. If they could not see a discharge line from the exterior, the homeowner, essentially what they did was they took a picture of their sump going to the exterior, or they took a picture of their sump before when it was connected to the sanitary line, and then they took a picture after it was disconnected. And in some cases, yes, they did do in-home inspections, and people were fined.
In new construction, though, are sump pumps enough if these 10-inch events are going to become more common? Does new construction need a full-fledged dewatering system from the start with a channel drains or some other form of dewatering?
I would say that what a lot of builders are learning, depending on where you're at geographically in the Midwest, a lot of builders are learning that they do not want to get a phone call from their customer, whether it's 1 year down the road or even 5 years down the road, that they have a flooded basement because something was not done. What we're seeing with builders is that, depending on the quality, price tag of the house, they're actually using a drainage system that is applied to the foundation that drops into the footing tile, which goes into the sump pit. But a lot of builders are recognizing that the mathematical formula of 1/4 or half-inch sump pump for every 1,800 to 2,300 square feet of the lower level just doesn't cut it. A lot of builders are putting a sump pump, they're putting 2, 3, and 4 in a home, strategically placed in different areas. And one of the things that I know of some builders in the Midwest, they're also doing exterior sump pumps. So they're using the purchased drainage system, or they're creating a French drain against the foundation. And a lot of builders figured out that it doesn't cost tens of thousands of dollars to keep a basement dry. It's several $1,000s, and on an average 2,300 square foot home. And a lot of builders are figuring out that, hey, these weather events are happening. They're designing homes with larger overhangs. They're putting on, instead of residential 4-inch gutters, I see a lot of builders that are putting on commercial 5-inch gutters. The whole point as a builder and me as a restorer is you can keep 95% of the water away from your foundation on the exterior through proper grading, proper landscaping, and proper drainage of your gutter system.
Let's talk about tiles, though. They tend to silt in after 20, 30, 40 years, don't they? And then you have the job to do over again, right?
Yes, they do. Eventually, they will silt in. The new systems that they have that are designed, and that's the old school way of doing it. You just did it on site, it collected water, it worked. 30, 40 years later, some of it silts in. The new systems that they're using now is actually applied against the foundation, and it would take well over 100 years plus for that to silt out. Now, it's 3 to 5 times the cost of having PVC or corrugated tile, but a lot of builders are figuring out that for an extra couple $1,000s per home and then an extra $500 for an additional sump pit, it's worth every penny so that we don't have these calls like we're getting in Bloomington and Normal.
Let's return to what people in Bloomington Normal are experiencing now. If they did have a sewer backup, how does that complicate the cleanup and the restoration job?
Sewer backups are nasty. According to the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Contractors, any product that comes out of a non-potable water source, a sewer, a drain, a toilet, is considered a Category 3, so there's 3 different levels. There's Level 1, which is clear water, very clean. Level 2 is gray water, which is questionable. When you get to sewer, you have to understand that you do not know what's in there. Sewage is considered, in some cases, to be a bloodborne pathogen. We don't know what's contained in there. There could be anything from hepatitis to, we don't know. So one of the biggest struggles we run into with sewage is you're dealing with fecal and urine. You're dealing with the unknown of what's in there. So the first thing we have to do is protect our employees. So all of our employees have all the proper tetanus and hep shots, things like that. They have to go into that situation and treat everything that is porous and contaminated as to be disposed of. They are in full PPE, so the Tyvek suits, full face respirators. And we have to protect their safety, number one. Number two, typically in a sewer loss, when you talk about your personal possessions, upholstered furniture, whatever it may be, if it's absorbent and we cannot guarantee absolute sterilization when we're done, then it has to be cut out and removed. So that adds to the cost of it as well. We're not drying someone's carpet or their drywall or plaster. That's all coming out, which adds an additional cost. And sewer backups are very challenging because your work environment is difficult to deal with. They're slower. You have to be more careful. Everything has to be double, triple bagged. It's just a really difficult work environment to be in.
Once you've removed stuff, how is it cleanable? I mean, there are surfaces that don't get removed that still have come in contact with the sewage.
Correct. So, for example, we always use the example of, let's say someone has had a sewer backup, and we've cut 2 feet of drywall off from the floor level up. We've removed the contaminated insulation inside, but yet we leave the stud, the actual wall framing. Wood on its own is actually a natural antimicrobial when it's in its raw state like that. When we go back and everything is dry, we go back and commercially disinfect everything, either with a commercial product, a disinfectant product, an antimicrobial or mildewcide. We also sanitize all those surfaces. And in some cases, we'll actually use steam. Nothing can live beyond 160 degrees.
Should people who have had backup sewage in their basements be living there during the cleaning process and the remediation process, or should they get out?
It depends on the situation. One of the things that we don't like, so we're going to use a typical home with a basement, and they've had a sewer backup. Number one, don't go down there, okay? Number two, when we get there, one of the first things we're going to do is shut down the heating and cooling system while we're working. Or we're going to close off and seal off all the vents so that there's no return air going from the basement and all of that back into the home. Whether they physically live there or not, that's up to them, although we absolutely recommend do not put yourself into the situation. And a lot of people, I've been talking to hundreds of people since early Saturday morning, and we've had a very large amount of sewer backups. And, I've heard things say, well, it doesn't look that bad, and I've had calls that have actual fecal matter and paper products that are covering their stuff. So without us seeing it before we get there, we advise do not go into the situation itself.
Of those 500 plus calls for service that you've had, how many involve sewer backups?
I would probably say close to 100. It's probably been, we had this discussion earlier within our office, and this was, I cannot remember an event outside of a river. A river is considered Category 3, same as a sewer backup. Outside of a river flooding like the Illinois, like back in 2013, I cannot remember an event where we've had so many sewer backups from one event.